great time for a coming of age story. I don't know about y'all, but I left home when I was like 18 or 19. So he comes to Texas and he's working at this sheep ranch. Before I go any further, let me tell you, we don't have a ton of primary sources, okay? So we do a lot of speculation here. I've read a lot of biographies. They plagiarize each other, they contradict each other. We can't back everything up. So as I'm telling you this story, know that a lot of it is interpretation from books that I've read, but we still need to leave some wiggle room because primary sources are limited. So anyway, working at the ranch, as best as I could piece together, is he didn't work that hard. I like to say any calluses on his hands more likely came from guitar strings than shovel handles. However, some things he did do. He was greatly influenced by hanging out in the West. The West is a theme that's going to show up in his work even after he leaves Texas, living in New York. You're going to see it again and again. You're going to see it in some illustrations that I'm going to show you that he did. And then, what else was I going to say about the ranch? Wait, did I mention he learned Spanish? He learned Spanish from the Mexican ranch hands. Just like the certification he got at his uncle's pharmacy, this learning Spanish is going to come really in handy a little bit later on. So after 2 years at the ranch, he decides it's time for him to move to the big city, and he moves to Austin, Texas. At that point, it's 1884. He's 21, on the cusp of 22. He's a party animal. He's a slacker. We like to say he was like the prototypical Austin slacker. He was an unemployed drunk musician. You can see a photo on this panel here. He was in we like to call it a boy band, the Hill City Quartet. I've got another photo here. And here he is, same photo, down here. Now here's something fun. One of the books suggested this, and again, I can't fully, confirm it, but that one of these other guys was in essence an influencer. His tailor who made his suits, I'm guessing it's this guy in the back here, gave him a discount on his suits because he knew he'd be performing in public. So it would be free publicity for him. The other thing that happened is after Will was here for a year, because he went by the name Will Porter while he lived here, and he would get jobs and quit jobs. But after being here for about a year, he attended an event, I think it was March 2nd of 1885. So he would have been 22 years old. They were laying the cornerstone for what is now our Capitol building. Everybody went. I call it the first Austin City Limits Music Festival. We have a photo in the other room. You'll see it's just jam-packed. He went that day with a group he belonged to called the Austin Grays. They called themselves a militia group. I don't think they really did much with like guns and protecting anybody. They got to drink beer in uniform, right? So he's there. Everybody in the city is there. And at a dance that night, he first meets Athol Estes, A-T-H-O-L, Athol Estes. She went to Austin High School. She would have been 16 at the time. Will is smitten with Athol. Athol's parents are not smitten with Will. They do not want this courtship to happen. They do not listen to her parents, not surprisingly. But let me explain that it wasn't just the age difference that caught her parents' attention. That's really not a massive age difference, especially for the time. She was still in high school, but here's the big issue. Athol had tuberculosis her whole life. Were she to marry and have children, the concern is this is going to kill her. And, spoiler alert, that is exactly where this story is heading, sorry to say. And I'll get back to that in a minute. They don't listen to her parents. Will courts Athol for 2 years. He writes her poetry, he draws her sketches, and he helps her with her homework. Not that I think she really needed help. She wound up being valedictorian of her class at Austin High School. But anyway, they hang out. The day after high school, July 1st of 1887, they elope. I mentioned where they eloped, to the home of her family minister. Now, she did not wake up that morning thinking, I'm getting married today. It was later in the day. Will very spontaneously decided to propose, let's get married today. She had a torn skirt on. But anyway, he whisks her away. And it was after hours. So I mentioned this because to explain how well connected he was able to enlist the help of his friend/employer to go to the county clerk after hours and get a marriage license and be married. A year after they married, their first child, Will Jr., was born and died on the same day of May 6th of 1888. Very sad, and he's buried at the Oakwood Cemetery. Thanks for coming in. Take care of yourself. And then a year and a half later, in I think it was September 29th of 1889, Margaret was born. Margaret made it to adulthood. As a quick aside, Margaret wound up working in Hollywood as a young woman, trying to get her father's stories made into movies. And when she was dying at the age of 37 from tuberculosis, she was divorced and had no children. So on her deathbed, 3 days before she died, she married her friend who was taking care of her so that he could inherit the whole estate. The estate primarily would have been her father's royalties. Less about property, but more about royalties. But that's a pretty big legacy, to leave behind.